And good afternoon, Bill Brady on the Pulse of Arizona, 1100 KFNX. More of our continuing coverage of election 2022 today. In this edition, we will be talking with David Raymer, a Democrat running for state Senate in LD29. David, good afternoon. Welcome to KFNX. Good to have you here.
Good afternoon, and very nice to meet you.
Now, this is something that thanks to the kindness of the state of Arizona, we have to ask everybody who's in here because of the redistricting and the changes in districts and the changes in numbers. What is in LD29?
LD29 is now Surprise, where I live, and then also El Mirage, Luke Air Force Base is right in the middle of it, and then down all the way to Litchfield Park and Pebble Creek.
And Whitman.
And Whitman.
Okay. So it's the same place, but it now falls in a different legislative district by number. Now, I want to ask you this as you get started. It's been an interesting campaign through the primaries and now into the general election. What prompted you to run for the Senate in LD29?
Well, I've been a chiropractor for 25 years and always had an interest in politics and followed it pretty much my whole life. And then I just saw the last two elections, there was no Democrat running for Senate, no regular Democrat. And it looked like this election, there was once again going to be only one candidate, a Republican. And I just thought I would step up to the plate and get a name on the ballot so people would have a choice.
Now, what's the makeup of the district?
The district is actually, it's been made larger and it's been made more Republican. From what I hear, it's 2-1 Republicans now. But I think everybody deserves a choice, and I really believe that every district should have two candidates that people can choose from.
Well, there are a lot of issues that state elections are not nonpartisan as city elections are, but there's a lot of issues that will affect people this time that kind of cross party boundaries. Immigration is the one that everybody who has come in here has talked about, and at every level of government, whether we've interviewed Senate candidates or whether we've interviewed congressional candidates and local candidates. Everybody is citing immigration as the big issue. As you look at the subject of immigration, how do you view the issue, and what do we need to do in Arizona and in particular through the legislature to deal with this issue?
Immigration and illegal immigration are not new issues. They've been around for a long time, since I was a kid and way before that too. I was just reading how during World War II they let Mexican workers into the U.S. to work in the war munitions factories, and that helped defeat the Axis powers. So America's always been growing. It always has a need for labor. We want that immigration to be in an orderly way, but we don't want it choked off to the point where our economy and our businesses can't grow. So if there's that many illegal immigrants coming, my feeling is that's an indication that there's a problem with the system. They're coming because there's a job waiting for them, and if there is a job waiting, then they should be allowed a legal way to come without being turned into criminals. So I think immigration reform is necessary, but yeah, we want to keep the border as safe as possible for obvious things like drug smuggling. We don't want that, and I believe they are actually under Joe Biden completing sections of the wall that Donald Trump started. So in the long term, I think that may be a good thing. But yeah, we need an immigration policy that works for people that would like to come honestly and work hard, and also the companies that need them.
So as far as what's going on the border, we just passed 2 million, I guess you would have to say, illegal immigrants during this past week. Is that the right approach?
That's a lot of people, and like I say, if there's that many people coming over the border, it's because there's jobs waiting for them, and so it needs to be legal and it needs to be orderly. And I think there's ways to do that if the politicians face the issue and deal with it like they should, rather than kicking the can down the road for the next bunch of politicians.
Well, yeah, I think I think a lot of people would agree that there's a need for immigration reform. Also, a lot of people don't like what they're seeing right now at the border in terms of the lawlessness of it. But certainly, and Donald Trump himself, with his Mar-a-Lago resort, used a lot of temporary work visas to staff his hotel there. So certainly there are ways of doing it, and most definitely, if you look at the demographics of the country, we're gonna need people to take care of our aging population, because we're also not reproducing at a rate that will keep up with that. This is Bill Brady on the Pulse of Arizona, 1100 KFNX. David Raymer is with us. He's a Democrat running for state Senate in Legislative District 29, and that encompasses Surprise, El Mirage, Pebble Creek, Luke Air Force Base, Whitman, and down all the way to Litchfield Park. So immigration is a big issue. Everybody that has come in here has cited that. Another issue that is of concern, I'm going to hold abortion till after the break, because that will probably run into some time. But education is also a big issue here. We have staffing challenges in terms of teachers. We've relaxed standards for substitute teachers as of this school year. What's your sense in regard to education, and are teachers here paid enough?
I have worked as a substitute teacher in Lake Havasu in Arizona, as I told you, and that was a few years ago. And I've also worked in a few other districts before that. Often when I was in between jobs or waiting for a new job to happen, I'd go get a substitute credential and teach for a couple months. And it was a lot of fun, and I got to meet the kids and be boots on the ground, standing in front of the classroom. Is a challenge and also very interesting and rewarding. From what I know, the pay scale in Arizona is quite a bit below the curve nationally. Arizona used to be a cheap place to live, but it's not as cheap as it was, and I think the salaries need to be raised to accommodate that. And they're talking about a teacher shortage right now. If they raise the base salary or across the board salaries of all teachers by $10,000 a year, that shortage would disappear overnight. And I don't think that's an unreasonable amount to ask, and their salaries would still be quite a lot lower than many other states.
We also did have a budget surplus this year, which kind of tells you that we could do that if we wanted to.
Yes, definitely, I believe so. And Arizonans have voted recently and in different measures to spend more money on education and not have an artificial cap on it like there is right now, and to find funding to do those things and improve the quality of education for all students in public schools. And there are a lot of very strong private schools and people that like to send their children to private schools in Arizona, and that's great. I don't believe that there should be a voucher program, which is basically giving money directly to private companies, but I read that a lot of other states have tax-deductible fees for private schools, and Arizona doesn't, to my surprise. So I think that's something that could be looked at, to have the school tuitions be tax-deductible rather than having vouchers.
The other thing, too, is I truly believe that education is the great equalizer. No matter what someone's born into, if they get a good education, then that helps them in terms of career and income moving forward, and can change their station in life in terms of their social status and their income level. So I think it's a vitally important thing. And places that do value it, even find it reflected in the property values. I lived in a circumstance where I was the last house on the street in the good school district, and the next house was in the other school. This was in New York State, where school district lines don't follow municipal lines. And I remember having a realtor come to my door one day and say, "Would you be willing to sell your house?" And it's just out of curiosity, why? She says, "I have a buyer. He looked at the house next door, but that's in the wrong school district. You're in the good school district. Would you be willing to sell? He'll pay." And I said, "Thanks for knocking on the door. Thanks for the information, but no." But the point being that the people in that area valued education so much that they were willing to pay more for the same physical house because it was in the right school district, and that was a sign of the value that they placed on education. Be nice if we did the same thing here. Bill Brady on the Pulse of Arizona, 1100 KFNX. David Raymer is with us. He's a Democrat running for the state Senate in Legislative District 29. We will continue in a moment. We have much more to talk about. This is part of our election 2022 coverage on the Pulse of Arizona, 1100 KFNX. Bill Brady on the Pulse of Arizona, 1100 KFNX. David Raymer is with us today. This is another edition of our continuing coverage of election 2022. David is a Democrat running for the state Senate in Legislative District 29. LD29 includes Surprise, Luke Air Force Base, El Mirage, Pebble Creek, and Whitman, and from Surprise all the way down to Litchfield Park. David, good to have you with us here today. Let's get to the big issue, because this is going to be an issue that I think could change the course of these elections in 2022, abortion. What is your position on that? And as a state senator, what would you be looking for Arizona to do in regard to abortion?
Abortion is a very emotional issue for a lot of people for obvious reasons. Lives. The Roe versus Wade was 50 years ago, I believe. I was maybe barely remembered that first happening. But I did agree that the strictly on privacy a statute in the Constitution was kind of a thin a reason for it, and I thought it should have been based more on medical freedom and obviously the right to not be put in physical danger by a dangerous pregnancy. So now I believe we have no abortion law at all in Arizona. The Republican Senate has proposed a bill, and opponents are calling it a total ban, which I don't believe it's a total ban, because as far as I understand, it's allowing it until 15 weeks, and would even force states that now don't have abortion at all, like Arizona, to have abortion up until 15 weeks. So I have to see that as a compromise and maybe a step in the right direction. I've always thought that 6 months was a very questionable time limit to be able to have on-demand abortions. That's up to the day of viability, and we've had a lot of technological and healthcare advances in the last 50 years, including you can get a dollar store test and know if you're pregnant in 5 minutes. And I think back when it started, they had to kill a rabbit or something. So things have changed a lot, and I would personally believe that 4 months would be a reasonable time to decide if you want an abortion or not, including instances of incest or rape. And after that, have it be ironclad that if a woman really is in danger from a problem pregnancy or any other thing, or a severe abnormality of the fetus inconsistent with life, then those choices should be ironclad after that time. No woman should be put in danger of dying because she's having a baby. So there needs to be a law that makes some kind of sense, where they say, okay, this and this and this are the situations, this is how we're going to verify it, and yes, sign off on that abortion, and not wait until a woman is hemorrhaging and nearly dead before somebody decides to do it, which of course could be too late by that point. So yeah, it's a very emotional issue. I think we do need abortion rights and reproductive freedom in this country, but I think some of the details of that right can be looked at again.
And a woman's right to choose, too.
And a woman's right to choose, of course,
Yeah.
if she wants one or not.
But with dominion over her own body. Let's chat in the remaining moments we have here about another issue that is critical, and that is, depending upon who's assessing it, it's the $400-500 a month increase of the cost of living because of inflation. In terms of your future job as state senator in LD29, what can the Arizona legislature do about the cost of living in regard to families here who certainly have been pinched by this at the very least?
A lot of that for us right now is energy costs. We got solar a couple of years ago, and we're glad we did. And we would be just about level a lot of months and pay nothing, and a lot of times even get a small rebate. And now it's gone up to where even on our best months we're paying $200 and $300 a month. And if you look at the bill, they're just adding charges to have charges. It's they added one called a use fee, which is just having to pay them an extra $200 apparently for the privilege of buying energy from the energy company. So people having solar should be encouraged. They shouldn't be dinged with extra charges to make sure that they're not getting by too cheaply. That's one thing. But things like inflation and gas prices are caused by larger forces. There is oil production in Arizona, and we can encourage the development of that. There's plenty of sun here. I've noticed living here the last 9 years, and luckily there's already quite a bit of solar energy and some wind energy, and we could develop that. Developing alternate energy doesn't mean we have to overnight stop the use of fossil fuels, and of course that's not going to happen, and that's impossible. So it could be an orderly, slow transition from one to the other. As alternate energy becomes more affordable, we should use it. And as far as inflation goes, we pumped a lot of money into the economy during COVID-19, and I think that was unavoidable to avoid a major economic crash. And we need to be realistic that there will be some inflation. The economy is very hot right now, and they're having to raise interest rates to cool it back down. And that reminds me of 2000 when they did the same thing in the dot-com crash happened. So you always have to be careful those kind of changes that you make. And as far as gas prices, they've always gone up my entire life whenever there's been a war in oil-producing countries, and that's happening in Russia and Ukraine right now, of course. And those supply lines are slowly returning, and that's causing the gas prices to go down again. They were talking about price gouging hearings in the U.S. Senate, and I think they should have them, because every time in my life the gas prices got too high, and then Congress threatened gas price gouging hearings, the prices magically went down. So they talked about it, and then they stopped talking about it, and the prices started going back up again. So I think that's the main thing they can do is have price gouging hearings in the national level and maybe at the state level.
Now, one other topic I want to touch base on with you, because it's one, if you follow the news, you're hearing stories of all sorts of violent acts, crime up in cities all across the country. We haven't had the surges that they've had in Chicago or Los Angeles or New York, but we're not immune to things. As a state legislator, what would your approach be to crime and the criminal justice reform and other things that are all tied up in the public safety issue?
I would say that crime is up in the last couple of years, but overall in the country, crime has gone down quite a bit in the last 30 years and before that. We overall have less crime in the United States than we did a couple decades ago, and most people wouldn't know that because the media sometimes makes it look like crime is rampant. And overall, Arizona is a peaceful city, and there's basically no neighborhood in Arizona or Phoenix that I wouldn't feel safe driving to or meeting somebody or walking around in because they just don't exist. And there's people of all kinds here in Arizona and all kind of backgrounds and speaking different languages, but it's largely a safe city.
David, thank you for being here today. I want to give you a chance to let people know how they can get a hold of you, how they can become involved in your campaign.
I am on just regular social media, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I have a website, which is www.davidraymer.FORLD29.com.
Okay, best of luck with your campaign. David Raymer has been with us, Democrat running for State Senate in LD29, and that includes Surprise, Luke Air Force Base, El Mirage, Pebble Creek, Whitman, and all the way down to Litchfield Park. David, thank you.
Thank you.
Raymer is spelled Raymer. All right, more to come. Tatiana Pena is coming up with us. She's also running this year for election.